Hello, everybody. I'm Dan Limbach with Pharma Voice, and I'd like to welcome you to today's event entitled Proactive Customer Communications, Best Practices for Outbound Pharma Engagements, brought to you by Pharma Voice and sponsored by our good friends at Angel. We have an outstanding crowd today from all around the world. Thank you for investing the time to attend. We'll certainly do our very best to make it worth your while. This web seminar is designed to be interactive between you, the audience, and the presenters. Now that we're through with the housekeeping details, let's dive into the content. We have two outstanding speakers today to help us understand the issues regarding proactive customer communications. So let's meet our thought leaders. First, we have Steve Gass, Senior Manager, Product Marketing at Angel, and we also have Shankar Sripatam, Product Manager at Angel. Steve is going to start things off today. Steve, you have the floor.
Thanks a lot, Dan. I appreciate it. And welcome to everybody to this wonderful Pharma Voice webinar from the pharmaceutical engagement perspective. Good afternoon, good morning to everybody. I hope that you find the information that you're going to hear over the next hour useful. We're going to be talking about the agenda that you see right now. I'm going to give you a little background on Angel, who we are and what we do. I'm going to hand over to Shankar, and he's going to talk about trends and implications today that you may be facing. Then we're going to talk about PCC, which stands for Proactive Customer Communications, the multi-channel environment in which we communicate with patients and others through proactive outbound communications. A little bit about campaign management with cloud tools and so on. So we're going to continue on, and of course you can ask questions during the event and we'll answer them at the end. We're also going to have a couple of poll questions, so watch for those to be coming by. We'd love to have your input from your guys' perspective as well. So a little bit about Angel. First of all, we are a cloud-based company that deals specifically in the automated space of communications, telecommunications. So we offer IVR, which is interactive voice response services. Inbound, that is, so if you're used to dialing 1-800-something and interacting with a machine, we do a lot of that across the globe, actually. We also do that from an outbound perspective. We send millions of outbound proactive communications out to many industries and their consumers and customers. And we also do virtual contact center solutions that help contact agents and contact centers operate more efficiently. We are founded in 1999, and we are actually a wholly owned subsidiary of MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy is one of the world-renowned leaders in the BI and analytics space. Angel itself has roughly 25 patents that have been granted for the technology that we use that you're all welcome to take advantage of. And you can see the other bits on there. We've got 1,200 plus customers in 20 different industries, so we've got a wide spread of customers listed down below. What's interesting is we've got over 10,000 applications. Those are actual live applications that consumers interact with on a daily basis for some of the nation's top consumer brands, and some of those are listed as well. And of course, we've had some industry awards acknowledged our way, which really shows our innovative technology that we have, and we're proud to have those types of recognition as well. So I said that we are a cloud-based company. For those of you that might not be familiar with the cloud technology, what that really means is that we allow our clients the ability to use our software and platform through a simple web internet connection. So we do all the heavy lifting for organizations such as yourselves, which means we invest in the technology, we invest in the hardware, the telecommunications lines, the data centers, things that you would typically find maybe on-premise or in-house, that more and more companies are moving to cloud-based technology as they move their expense item from a capital expense to an operational expense. Different way of looking at business and a different way of doing business. The cloud does afford a lot of advantages of moving your technology to the cloud. You're always guaranteed the highest level of security in whatever you do. Angel is a supplier of many services in the healthcare and financial services world, so we're very familiar with HIPAA and PCI requirements, along with a host of other security requirements we need from our data center and data perspective. The platform that you can take advantage of is scalable. It's built to be scaled based on usage, and it's geo-redundant, which means that we've got more than one data center located across the United States. So if one would fail, we can simply switch over to the other one, kind of in an active role. I talked about the elimination or reduction in capital expense necessary from a cloud perspective. One of the other benefits that many organizations do realize is that the speed of market is much faster. They're not reliant upon a application or engineering group internally to do work on their behalf. Everything is done from our perspective. Angel supplies those types of engagements to help you go fast into the market and be leaders in the market. And if necessary, you need to expand the bandwidth to get more capacity or get your messages out faster. We provide that service as well. And all of that is included in what we call pay for what you use. So there's no need for you to invest in those infrastructures, which would include brick and mortar, technology, hardware, other software, and people. You simply pay to use the platform that Angel supplies. So a lot of folks moving in that direction, and not only in our type of industry that we serve in the telecommunications space, but a lot of CRM providers are in the cloud now, as well as financial services packages, accounting packages. So you may be familiar with it. If not, that's a little overview of why the cloud. And then we talk a little bit more about the Angel platform, and we call it our CX platform or customer experience platform. We really like to think of it as a virtuous cycle. And what that means is that we always start with the center there, which is the consumer, the patient, the subscriber, whatever the case may be. And we look to design applications that promote a really positive customer interaction, customer experience. And when you start with the design and knowing what the end results are that you're trying to achieve, you can then take that design and couple it and integrate it with data. Data is very key to all of this, knowing about your customer or integrating with CRM systems or other patient management systems that may be in place or ordering systems so that you can actually do some very clever outbound notifications using that data. And we couple that through our tool, which is called CX Builder. That's the web portal that organizations use from Angel's standpoint to create these inbound, outbound type of communication strategies without the need of having a programmer do it or an engineer do it. It's a simple tool that a business user can actually go in and set themselves up and start to create outbound notifications within a short amount of time. And then we actually apply analytics to the end, which I like to say is your insight into your own business. You get that insight into what's happening in near real time with your outbound communications programs, your automated outbound communications programs, and to see if it's getting the results that you've wanted, the desired results, the outcomes that you might have wanted to employ, and have a specific call to action that patients or providers may want to have somebody follow through up. So it's an iterative approach to get people engaged to react to a call to action. And then you do that again. So you look at the results. If it's not really what you expected, you can tune it, you can tweak it, you can change it. Everything can be done on the fly through again, you go through the virtuous cycle until you start to get the results that you're really comfortable with and starting to see your business expand. So we like to say that the customer experience is just as important as the technology. That's a pretty heavy statement, but we start with the customer experience in mind. We're more interested in what the customer experience is rather than what the technology is to deliver that. But when you use certain methodologies from the design, the correct evaluation tools, and apply best practices that we're going to talk about, you're going to have a much better customer experience in the end, which ultimately drives your business results. and we'll show you a little bit about that when we talk about it in the use cases and PCC best practices section later on in the presentation. But right now, I'm going to turn it over to Sean Carr, who will take you through a couple of sections, and I'll be back with you to finish up.
Thank you, Steve. I'm going to start off with some trends that were identified in a recent PricewaterhouseCoopers report. What the report notes is, first of all, patients are better informed, more so than ever, right? So according to Manhattan Research, about 61% of adults over the age of 18 plus have downloaded mHealth app in 2011. And 85% use social media for discussing health-related topics. Patients are also picking a bigger share of their bill, right? And demand for personalized medicine is increasing. So when we talk about personalized medicine, we're talking about individualized treatment and care based on personal and genetic variation. In the United States, this is a $232 billion market today, and it's expected to grow at 11% annually. And patients want cures, not treatments. They want results. And they're willing to pay for performance a premium price. What are the implications of all this? Increasingly, pharma will be paid for outcomes, not products. It's not the drugs that they're going to be paid for anymore. By concentrating on delivering outcomes as opposed to drugs, pharma can create and capture real value. Pharma will need to offer medicine plus packages of care, and increasingly this will be offered by collaborating with other service providers. Again, the focus is not just medicine, but it's on patient outcomes. Outcome will also drive healthcare policy going forward, and prevention will gain a higher healthcare profile. Okay. What we're also seeing is healthcare is increasingly moving closer to the patient, thanks to the plethora of internet and mobile devices, right? So in 2007, if you were a patient and you had to go to a secondary care center for diagnostics and minor surgeries, in 2020, right, this will probably be handled by your primary care physician. Again, in 2007, your initial diagnosis and routine checks were handled by your primary care centers. By 2020, we're going to see web-based and mobile application-based self-diagnostic applications, thanks largely in part due to the different sensors that are being added to the mobile devices. Increasingly, self-management by patients. We're also going to see a slew of wellness services, like prescription reminders and adherence services sprout. And wellness services will be an important component of patient care. Okay, so what is the wellness challenge, right? So why is wellness important? Let's look at some statistics. 70% of all the healthcare costs are related to preventable conditions. 23% of all nursing home admissions are because patients didn't take prescription medication accurately. And 25% of serious adverse drug events are preventable. If you look to the right, about 50% of 2 million prescriptions filled each year are not taken correctly, right? Look at the chart there for a minute. What you'll see is some of the main reasons for non-compliance. About 80% of the patients just forget to take their medicine, and about 18% run out of medication. And you'll notice that this is largely preventable, right, by maybe designing a simple prescription reminder. So pharmas stand to benefit by using these simple applications, and they can actually increase revenue and improve adherence rates. Speaking of which, let's take a closer look at adherence rates, right? Depending upon the condition, whether it's enlarged prostate or depression, the non-adherence rate can be anywhere from 37% on the low side all the way up to 50% on the high side. So our goal as an outbound service provider and your goal as a pharma company is to try and push the adherence rates to the right as much as possible, right, for all of these conditions. Look to the chart on the right there. It's basically showing the adherence rate across different durations of therapy. you can see that the adherence rate goes from 69% at the time of the first filling all the way down to 43% after 6 months of continuous refills. In this case, the goal is to keep the adherence rate from going down, and we want to try and keep it relatively flat, as the red line indicates there. So the story here is really telling. To effectively manage patient outcomes, pharma should focus on wellness programs such as prescription reminders as well as adherence services. Okay, so far we've discussed the why of wellness services. Now let's discuss the how piece of it, right? Which is basically proactive outbound communication. So how are you going to create these wellness services? How are you going to deploy these wellness services? Also, before we do a deep dive into proactive communication, let's remember that you can use proactive communication not just for wellness and adherence services, but you can also use it for a number of other services and manage the patient lifecycle. And Steve Gass here is going to be talking about this at length later on in this presentation. Okay, with that, what is proactive outbound communication? It refers to outbound solution that delivers notification, alerts, messages through different channels: email, SMS, fax, voice. But the important thing is that the information that is provided to the patient or the customer is highly relevant. It's something that they want you to provide, as opposed to something that you want to push out. Okay? And it also provides for engagement during the connection. We'll talk about different channels for providing outbound communication. You've got voice, IVR, mobile, SMS, email, social, all of these different channels. Let's look at a few of these channels and understand, how they work, what are the benefits, what are the disadvantages of using the channel, right? The first step is live agents. They're great for campaigns because they provide a very personalized feel, right? You've got real human beings interacting with patients, which is great. The problem with live agents is that they tend to be expensive. Interactive voice response systems, on the other hand, can provide voice as well, and they can be very cost effective. So if your live agent costs anywhere between $5 to $25, your IVR will cost you anything between 5 cents and 25 cents. A good complementary mix of agents and IVR will also work great, depending upon your use case. So the question is, when do you want to use an IVR and when do you want to use a live agent, right? So if your message is complex in terms of interactivity required, then IVR is not complex, then IVR may be a good choice, because you can provide personalized data-driven interactions at low cost, right? But if you're dealing with calls that are sensitive and you want to build trust with the patient, then you probably want to use agents. So those are some tips. SMS, right? It stands for Short Messaging Service. In the United States alone, over 6 billion messages are exchanged each day. It's the good thing about SMS is unobtrusive from a user perspective. It just pops up. But from your perspective, it's also cheaper than IVR, so you might want to think about it. It's not very interactive. It's not as interactive as an IVR, and it also lacks the media richness, meaning that it's not voice, it's text. Those are some of the disadvantages. Another disadvantage is that it typically has a lower reach because SMS can only work with cell phones, whereas voice can work with both cell phones as well as landlines. Email, right? Email is a great low-cost channel. It's, again, unobtrusive. But a message that you send over email may or may not be read by the patient. So traceability is an issue with email. And also, it doesn't lend itself very well for two-way interactive conversation, right? You can send emails back and forth, but it's not as good as real-time communication. Social channels are also sprouting. You've got Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn increasingly being used for conducting campaigns. The challenge is that typically these campaigns are time-consuming, and again, traceability and the novelty of the channel as such is a challenge. The last channel is mobile push notifications, the new kid in the block. Push notification, you've definitely experienced this if you're an iPhone or an Android user. It basically shows up as a small pop-up, which when you click, it takes you to more information. The great thing about push notification is that your media can be really anything. It can be just an HTML page, it could be video, audio, survey forms, you name it. Also, it can provide for a very highly immersive experience, which is great for your brand. And it can also be triggered off location, so you can use what is called location-based services. The limitation of push notification, though, is that first of all, it works only with smartphones. Second, somebody needs to have installed your app, and third, they need to have opted in to receive push notifications. So all of that limits the reach of push notification quite a bit. And that said, we're seeing a lot of innovation around the push notification area, like notifications, newsstands. All of this is going to kind of help make push notification more of a mainstream channel as opposed to a fringe channel, which is what it is today. Okay, now let's try to understand channel choice from a patient or a consumer standpoint. What does the patient want to do? What is he trying to do? What task does he want to accomplish? And what do you want him to accomplish? So the patient is typically looking for the easiest way to get the task done. Okay, for him, what matters is timeliness, accuracy, and the overall experience. From your perspective, you want to offer a slew of channels, the full range of services, so that the patient can select what he wants. The second thing you want to consider is the situation. Where is this patient, or the consumer? Where is he? Is he at home? Is he at work, hospital? Is he on the move? Are they in a rush to do something? Do they have time to spare? What communication means are at their disposal? You want to build a communication strategy taking into consideration all of this. The third thing you want to consider is the habit. What are the channels that the patient is most comfortable with? What do they trust? You can understand their habits over time based on interactions that you've delivered in the past, or you can basically solicit this information, what is called preference management, right? And Steve is going to talk to you more about preference management in a little bit. You can also use BI. You can look at you can use business analytics and intelligence to kind of look at demographic trends and see what their preferences have been traditionally, right? And the last thing we want to talk about is awareness. You want to make sure that your patient or consumer knows about all the different channels being offered so that they can make the right choice for themselves. Next, we're going to talk about campaign management. How do we create a successful campaign? What are the key elements that go into a successful campaign? What is a campaign in the first place, right? The campaign is basically something that you execute, right? You have all this information about your patient, contact information that you basically use to deliver some sort of notification and alert to your patients, right? That's basically a campaign. So at the heart of the campaign is patient data, right? This includes contact information, historic response rates, behavioral information, transaction history, demographics, all of that stuff. And they can be sourced either from internal CRM systems or they can come from external sources. Even social media, for instance, could be a source where you're pulling this kind of information from. The next thing you want to concentrate is the overall campaign strategy or the design. A couple of tips here is make sure that your campaign strategy aligns with your message strategy, your channel strategy, your communication strategy, and also your target demographic. Also think about your campaign as waves as opposed to a one-shot strategy. So what we mean by that is you want to learn from your previous campaign and use those learnings to improve your next campaign. Here's where analytics plays a role, right? And lastly, think about your channels as a composite, right? It's like white light from a customer's perspective. He doesn't see the violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, red. He sees one communication channel, right? And the conversations across these channels is seamless. He can start off a conversation in one channel and jump to another channel, and you just continue from there. Make sure your strategy revolves around this. Next, look at technology. Make sure that you have the right campaign management tools to load, contact information, customer data management, design, measuring results, looking at reports, and lastly, make sure you have a good analytics solution, right? Because you want to continually improve your campaigns from one campaign to the next. Steve talked about the virtuous cycle. Let's talk a little bit more about what constitutes a successful campaign. Okay, you want to start with your goals. You want to understand your organizational needs. Is it increasing revenue? Is it increasing loyalty? You want to identify these early in the process, and then you want to set objectives against these goals. You want to make your objectives SMART, right? SMART is basically an acronym for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. Identify the key performance indicators and make your objectives as much as possible quantifiable. And then go about identifying the different use cases for proactive outbound communication. Make sure that your use cases align with your organization goals again. For instance, if your organization goal is to increase revenue, right, think of applications like maybe product promotions, patient adherence, prescription reminders, all of which will basically increase revenue, right? Once you've identified the application use cases, look for the big hitters. Don't try to do all of them at once. Look for the big hitters, the ones that will provide the biggest bang for the buck, and execute them fully and completely, and get comfortable with that before you go on and take other applications. Understand your target audience. Who are they? How would they like to be contacted? What time of day? All that stuff. Understand your resources. What technology is being offered? Who are the vendors you're working with? Are they cloud-based solutions? Think about IVR. Think about analytics. Think about API. Think about campaign management. Right? All that stuff. And lastly, work with the vendors to develop a solution. Understand the best practices that each vendor offers. Make sure that you pick the right voice talents to reflect your brand, right? That's important too. Design your call flows. Execute your campaign, right? Set up some dry runs in a test environment. Make sure your call flow and your voice talent are good. If everything looks good, you're all set. Execute your campaigns and start measuring success against your objectives. And lastly, continuous improvement. Here's where BI again plays a big role. You want to use big BI to gain insight into your campaigns, understand your user, understand their behavior, and continuously improve, again, the virtuous cycle. With that, Steve, it's back to you.
Thanks a lot, Shankar, for that fine information. Hopefully you'll find that useful, and we'll talk about how to employ that information and when we talk about best practices next. But right now we'd like to pause for just a minute and ask your participation, please, in an audience poll.
Thanks, Steve. This is Dan Limbach again, and it's time for our audience participation poll. We'd like to know in this first poll, what channels do you currently use for your proactive customer communications? And if I could ask the operator to put up the poll template, we can have our audience start chiming in with their responses. The choices are voice, SMS, email, social media, and mobile/push notifications. So while we're waiting for people to select their responses, and you can select more than one in this case, and click the submit button, let's see what we can talk about here. Steve, how many channels do you think a company should use when they're first getting into some of these types of tools? Should they start out slowly, or should they jump into all of them at the same time?
It'd be our recommendation from an industry perspective that they start out a little bit slowly and learn to walk before they run, and typically start out with something that's easily manageable. You can do a voice outbound notification pretty easily. You can also do an email type of notification, but you wouldn't get the type of interaction that you might want to get through a voice channel that you could get. Whether that's asking them from a use case perspective, if they've taken their medication today, they can actually press 1 for yes or 2 for no, and you can follow that up based on what their answer is with, why don't you go ahead and take it, or whatever the case may be. So starting slow and then working into the multi-channels and learning how to develop those contact strategies that are most effective for patients is really a good starting point.
So do you think in the future there's going to be more channels to choose from, or are some of the older ones going to kind of fall off and the new ones will replace them, so there's always going to be maybe 5 or 6 choices?
That's a very, very good question. There's always, from an analyst perspective, when we're looking at what's happening in the marketplaces, and it really doesn't matter what industry that you're in, you're seeing more and more movement to the use of data, and that means through, a smartphone, a device, an iPad, something where you're actually interacting with an application rather than interacting with voice. And the trend is to move away from voice, but we don't see that going away. Anytime in the near future, there's still a need to be able to actually pick up the phone and talk to somebody or interact with an interactive voice response unit. But there will, for the time being, there's always going to be voice. We feel there's going to be SMS messaging, which is really starting to take off in much greater successful ways. Email, that will forever be around as new channels start to come out. What we're really starting to see, though, is the movement towards social. But, interacting with somebody from a social perspective, Dan, is a little bit difficult because of the sensitivity of the natures, at least in the healthcare, pharmaceutical, or pharmacy space. It's difficult to ensure that you're having a private interaction with individuals at this point. But the movement is that way, and that all relates to the data world.
Excellent. Well, everyone should have had a chance to give us their thoughts on this and make their selections. So if the operator could put those results up, and then Steve, why don't you comment on some of those results that you see before you move on with your presentation?
This is really great. So thank you all for the participation and submitting your responses. I appreciate that. This doesn't surprise me, from a pharmaceutical perspective, that, the vast majority is email-based. It's driven now. That's, really one of the biggest contact points that people are starting to feel more free with giving that information to providers, to retail pharmacies, to pharmaceutical companies. They're more apt to give you an email address because they can choose whether or not they want to interact with that, and they can do whatever they want with it from a consumer's perspective or a patient's perspective. Voice, of course, does not surprise me, nearly 60% there. But I'm thrilled to see, that SMS, social, and mobile push are being used or being considered to be used. That's, as time goes on, I think you're going to see those numbers kind of flip around. So this is, I think, what we would expect to see at this point, but the data portion will probably continue to start to outpace the voice portion. Okay.
Excellent. Well, Steve, you can advance your slide to the next one and continue with your presentation. Thank you to the audience for participating in our first poll.
Thank you very much, Dan. Okay, well, now we're going to talk about best practices, right? Really what we're here for. Shankar did a nice job in talking about the trends that are out there. Hopefully most of those trends are what you're seeing. We want to hopefully give you some information that might help you to deal with some of the challenges that you're finding in communicating with patients or subscribers or whatever the case may be. So when we start talking about the practices that I'm going to start to share with you, they're going to be around the themes of personalization. Personalization as in making the message personal, the relevance of the message, how relevant is it to the patient, and how timely are those messages being delivered. Preference management, which is a newer concept in the world today. I'll talk to you a bit about what that means and how that can be used as your friend. And then, one of the biggest things that we run across in almost every vertical industry that we serve is regulatory compliance, and the healthcare pharma space is that's very, very pertinent as we all know today. So let's start with personalization. Really, personalizing is key in these things. Individuals, they really, really want to hear or see their name. It makes every bit of difference in the world when you get a phone call that is an automated phone call that knows that you're delivering the message to you as an individual, to a patient as an individual. You really want to make it so that individual feels special. You want to avoid mass notifications. Mass notifications can be used in certain circumstances, maybe from a drug recall perspective, or something that you're really just trying to get out from more of an informational purpose, not from a personalized, very intimate nature. Interactions that have sensitive natures, you want to use a right party verification or a right party authentication process. I've got a simple example there. You try to ask for, is this Bill Smith? And if it is, press the star key, and then you can ask a further question. Enter in your last 4 digits of your Social Security number, or enter in your prescription number, or something that would tie that star key back to Bill Smith and verify that it's him. You can also use voice biometrics. This is a new technology that's starting to play a pretty big part in determining if you're speaking to the right individual or not. It measures your voice pattern. You're able to record your voice and actually use that as your key. And when it asks you to answer your security question, you'll respond in the same tone that you did when you recorded it, and it'll authenticate you and let you through and hear the system message. Many organizations are using secure email or secure email inboxes, where they're able to send very sensitive information through a secure email provider, making sure that you're authenticating with that recipient on one end. You're actually exchanging security data keys. That's the technology behind it that says, yep, this is who I meant to send it to. That's who opened that email, so go ahead and show them the personal information that's in that. It's all very good practice to keep that from, personalized and guarded and toward that individual. And of course, use any customer data that you have available to enrich the interaction to gain a better customer experience. The more you know about your patient, your consumer, your customer, the better interaction that you can actually create when you use a proactive outbound communication strategy. The next thing that you really need to keep in mind is making sure that the information that you're about to disclose to that individual is relevant, that it's meaningful. Those two combinations of meaningful and relevant, when the data meets those two criteria, you're almost guaranteed to have a customer engagement. And that engagement is what's very important, from a pharmaceutical perspective, that you're getting them to react to the call of action, because you're presenting them with relevant information to them, whether it's you're looking to do adherence programs or support programs, whatever it might be. You're able to get them engaged because you're really talking to them as an individual. It's meaningful to them, and they're starting to feel more comfortable with that interaction. And that ultimately leads to higher customer satisfaction and success rates. And the bottom line there, the message is, it's relevant if it's engaging, it's rewarding, or it provides that compelling call to action for a patient or a consumer to receive. And ultimately, it has to be timely as well. And that leads me right into timely delivery. There's nothing more that will stop a great customer patient experience is if you're delivering information to an event that happened in the past. And you need to make sure that they're delivered at the appropriate time, that they're delivered before an event might happen, or you'll stand the risk of discrediting yourself as an organization and not getting the messages out to a patient consumer so that they can react to the message. And the example that I've got on the right-hand side is a happy customer that's received their prescription reminder that it's due to be picked up or it's ready to be refilled. You want to make sure that you do that notification before they've been to the retail pharmacy to pick up their prescription, or that it's during inappropriate hours, after 9 o'clock or early in the morning, or sometimes when a consumer gives you their preference of when to call them, you're calling them during those times of day. And we talk about preference management. This is really something that's key to having an incredible customer experience, because you're putting the power into the patient's hands by allowing them to tell you what they want to hear, when they want to hear it, what mode do they want to receive that message through, and the times of days that they want to receive the message or not receive messages for whatever matter that may be. What you're seeing on the screen is my actual Walgreens account. So my hand's up. I get my prescriptions at Walgreens. You all know that now about me. But it is communication preferences. So this is what we call a preference management module, where I can log into Walgreens or any other retail pharmacy or my travel, United or Delta or anybody, and tell those enterprises how I want to be contacted, what I want to hear from them, and when I want to hear it. And it's very important that you do that because it gives them the control of gathering that information from you as an organization that wants to present them with important information. Most people will opt in, and we're going to talk about opt-in and consent in just a second, but this is a great way to get folks their permission to allow you to send them information because of the compliance restraints that we all fall under. So this is an easy little web portal to build. It's a data collection point. You can use this to collect email addresses, cell phone numbers, home phone numbers, Facebook accounts, Twitter handles, whatever it might be. You can use that to get them to engage with you in a more meaningful fashion. And use of preference management also helps with complying to the regulations that we're all under these days, and the security of the data that we all know is very important. But you really need to be cognizant of all the regulatory compliances. One thing that you don't want to do is be known as a robocaller. If I think most of us in this world probably knows what a robocall is. If you got any of the automated outbound voice calls from the presidential candidates or anybody during the election cycle in November, or actually starting back in probably May, you are inundated with what they're called robocalls. Right, so you want to try to avoid that, and you can do that by utilizing a preference management system, and then making the message relevant so that the recipient knows that it's about them. And you also need to be concerned about getting their consent to be able to either send them an SMS message or call them for marketing purposes. And you can need to be aware of how to gather that consent, and one of those ways was through the preference management portal that I showed you on the screen before. But there's other ways that you can do that. You can do it through email. You can do it at a point of sale. If you've got a partner that has a point of sale kiosk or anything, you can actually use that to gather consent and opt-in preferences and preference management all the while. And in some cases, you have to entice the customer to provide that consent. That could be in terms of a discount on medications. It could be in terms of, trial medications, whatever it may be, some form of enticement to get us as a patient to give us, to give you our okay to reach out to us on certain measures. I'll talk a little bit about opt-in and opt-out management. Some of you may be aware that there is the National Do Not Call database that people can go in and put their cell phones in and their landlines in to say, don't call me about anything. You need to make sure that you participate in scrubbing your databases of those numbers. There's always a kicker to that, though. There's another side to that if you have their consent because you gathered it through various means that we just spoke about, you can override that National Do Not Call database then and certainly provide them with the outbound notification. And we always recommend that, when you're starting to get into the compliance perspective of proactive outbound communications, you'll want to employ some sort of compliance resource, whether you have somebody in-house that does that on your legal team, or you can actually find resources externally of groups that will provide those types of services for you so that you maintain compliance and adherence to the regulations that abound. Okay. So, when you couple those 5 things together, you can really create a really meaningful and engaging dialogue with the consumer through automation. And it really is about automation and making best use of technology so that you're driving your costs down, All the while you're driving your revenues up and customer satisfaction or patient satisfaction up as well. So now I'm going to move on and we're going to talk about use cases, proactive customer communications in the pharma space, as well as look at some metrics for success and how to know if you're successful or not in your outbound communications strategies. This slide is really, it's a value slide. It shows the value in the creation of the patient life cycle. So how do you gain value out of dealing with a patient throughout the entire life cycle of becoming a supplier of services and products to a patient? And that begins day one when you acquire that patient as a customer. You can send welcome messages. You can send promotional care messages to them. You can actually send them gifts if you want to, through direct mail. That's also another channel. You can provide other promotions to them to get them to participate in promotions that you may want to maybe upsell or cross-sell to them as they become a customer and a patient of the pharmacy, the pharmaceutical company. As you move through the cycle down to the right, you start to get into provider and patient care applications that can be used. You can talk about wellness calls and making sure that people are adhering to their prescriptions, reminding them about their prescriptions, that they're ready to be refilled or that they are refilled and they're ready to be picked up at their local retail pharmacy. You can provide them with locations of preferred pharmacies as well, letting them know where they can actually get their prescriptions filled. You can also do special instructions or drug interaction calls to make sure that they're not taking something that may be something that's going to make them sicker or something to that effect. Then you move into the revenue cycle management from a patient perspective and from a care provider or from the pharmaceutical perspective. There's a lot of applications that can be help drive Medicaid, Medicare discounts, the status of claims, where's my, did my copay get applied? Why haven't I seen my claim status? You can use proactive outbound communications to share that information back with them, letting them know the status of their claim, letting them know the status of where their payments are and why they're, why they're not seeing movement maybe on their provider's portal or whatever it might be. Reimbursement assistance, we talk about that. So as you move through the whole life cycle of a patient of yours as a consumer of your products and services, you can see that there's many, many things that you can do from a proactive perspective to continually to drive your brand, to drive the loyalty, and actually drive that consumer satisfaction up, that patient satisfaction, and ultimately to get them to, buy more of your products and services. Very, very interesting life cycle from a pharmaceutical perspective and from the healthcare perspective. How do we measure success then? What makes this successful? Well, I will tell you that the success criteria varies, and it really varies on the call to action. So in that previous slide, I was talking about the different types of applications or notifications that you can do. You want to understand, before you set off and do those, what success would look like for each one of those types of applications, and then you can actually measure their success based on how many contacts did you make? Were they successful contacts? Did you actually have a human on the other end of the phone that is interacting with the service, or did you leave a voicemail at home, or did you send an SMS message and they replied to that and there was an interaction there? The key is to realize what your desired outcomes are. If it's revenue growth, cost reduction, or loyalty, brand loyalty, customer satisfaction, it could be all of those. And then how to drive that by individual campaigns and the success of a campaign. And again, a campaign is what we talked about, a refill reminder or a adherence reminder, some of the use cases that we talked about. And as you increase your contact rate, as you get more and more people engaged in that voice IVR or through an email campaign or an SMS campaign, you're able to produce higher revenues and higher refill rates or higher adherence rates by getting more and more people on the phone and engaged. That's really what is very, very key. And providers like Angel, have the data and the insight to give you that visibility into your own data so that you can see if those campaigns are being successful and then whether you need to tweak them or start over or, find out where people may be hanging up during a phone call so that you can go in and correct those types of issues as well. And ultimately, it leads to, increased program success, the overall program success that you're trying to run. Again, we talked about the life cycle touch points. So what this represents is really there's the multitude of channels that Shankar talked about earlier: voice, email, SMS, mobile push. We're not neglecting social channels. There's more challenges around delivering sensitive information through those channels, but every one of those has the ability to affect the life cycle of a patient and the touch points during the acquisition or whether we're managing and servicing the account and providing care to the patients. And care not being health care or pharmaceutical care, we're talking about customer service care at that point. So there's always a good way to touch all of the patients and consumers and even care providers during those same types of cycles. Right? We don't need to just think about from a patient perspective. We can talk about it from delivering information to providers as well, whether their patients are adhering to the medication standards that have been prescribed or whether or not there's new information that you'd like to share about a certain medication or something new that might be coming out. So various ways of using the technology to drive home your point, not only to the patients but also to the care providers or the payers actually as well. So as we swing on in, we need to end again with another poll question if we can. Dan, if you could.
Absolutely, Steve. So this is our second of two audience polls, and just like before, you can select more than one answer. I'd like to ask the operator to put that template up. And the question is, what proactive customer communication applications are you currently using or considering using in the near future? And those could be promotions, wellness calls, such as prescription reminders, pharmacy locations, or special instruction calls. They could be revenue cycle management applications like Medicaid and Medicare discount and reimbursement assistance. They could also be post-procedure or post-clinical trials follow-up calls or something else entirely. So select all that apply to you, and we'll give you a little time to get those responses in. So, Steve, how does one decide which activities are best to implement next? Are there some that are more baby steps and then some that are more advanced? How does that work?
Another good question, Dan. Starting with the baby steps, so look at something that's going to drive value for your patients as well as the organization, and one that is a little easier to implement and a little easier to track using, if you take it back to the beginning of using the data that you have available, find something that you can actually build from a campaign perspective using the data that's available to you about a patient or about a provider or a service provider, and actually walk through the development of that campaign and think about the outcome that, the potential outcome that you're trying to do. But use the data that you're familiar with, use a channel that you're familiar with and comfortable with, and then start to roll campaigns out and test them. And you can do this in two steps. You can roll out a simple campaign and see what the results are, or you can roll out a couple of campaigns at the same time. They could be the exact same campaign, but on one hand you use voice, and on the other hand you use email or SMS, and you compare the results. And then you start to refine and go through the iterative process of making sure that the results are what you are expecting and tweaking where necessary when they're not what you expect. And then as you start to, we start from walking to running, you're going to get a little more clever about how you build the campaigns, the data interactions that you're going to need, what value that you're providing to the patient or the care provider or however you want to run the campaign, and just make sure that you're constantly evaluating the results to make sure they're driving the results you're really looking for.
Excellent. Okay, so let's see the results. If we can get the operator to put the results of the poll up, and then Steve, when you see those, why don't you comment on what you're seeing?
Well, what I'm seeing is something that's very encouraging, actually. There's That was a great response rate, so thank you all very much for participating in the poll. But to see the numbers on here that people are actually using PCC to drive promotions and wellness calls, revenue cycle management, that one kind of surprises me that that's lower. Revenue cycle management is one that you can really roll out some fairly simple-to-do campaigns to remind people perhaps about payment past due notices, where's the status of your claim, types of things in revenue cycle management. So that one surprises me that it's low. But the wellness calls, that's really exciting to see. So what that means is that we're trying to move more of that patient care back onto the patient, and the calls are being placed, or at least the applications are in place to ring a phone or an email to get patients to engage. That's very, very encouraging to see that. 35% of other. I'd like to know somehow if we could what that other category represents. That's a pretty significant number. So we didn't have that in the poll question, but perhaps we can find that out somehow in the future.
Excellent. Well, Steve, you can take over control of the slides and continue on.
Fantastic. So we're at nearing the end, and we're nearing the hour time frame. So I appreciate everybody's time. But I hope that when you walk away from the event today, we hope that you've heard some good best practices that allow you to quickly communicate this important information to patients and consumers and professionals. The use cases that we cited, there's many more use cases. Shankar and myself would be happy to interact with anybody on the webinar if they'd like to discuss different types of use cases, but we've provided some that may spark an interest, and maybe get some of the creative juices flowing to maybe get some outbound campaigns going further throughout the pharmaceutical industry. Again, executing a proactive outbound campaign is easy. It's easy to do. There's a lot of tools out there to do it. Cloud-based tools are really simple to employ and to use. I would encourage you to look around at those. And then the metrics for success, while we didn't have specific ROI examples, there are very clear ROIs that can be generated. Again, I'd be happy to work with anybody that needed to maybe understand what, at a greater detail what the ROIs are. But the key is to measure your campaigns and make sure that they are fulfilling what your outcomes were actually proposed to do when you built the business case to get into proactive communications or use them in a deeper meaning. And so at that, we come on to the Q&A section.
That's right, Steve. And this is always a popular section of our web seminars. So thanks to everyone that's already submitted some questions. If you'd still like to submit a question, you can use it using the submit a question feature. Just type it into the box and click submit, and we'll try and get to as many as we can. If you also want to contact the folks at Angel, asking for the slides or wanting to talk to any of our presenters, you can email abrennan@angel.com and just put webinar in the subject line. So let's get into our Q&A. First question, and Steve, I'll let you decide if you want to take this or if you want your esteemed colleague to take it. All right. What multi-channel trends are you seeing in proactive customer communications?
Very good question. So what we're starting to see is, of course, voice is the king still. It is, what we're seeing is about 80% of all outbound proactive notifications are still done by voice. Quickly following that up would be email, but email is also quickly being replaced by SMS messaging. While Shankar talked about, not everybody has the ability to text a message, it is a channel that is starting to be very prevalent. You're seeing more and more retail pharmacies offering the ability to interact through an SMS message to either refill a prescription or be notified that a prescription is actually being refilled and it's ready to be picked up, as well as reminders to take medication. And I'll go one step further and say that, in the healthcare space as a total, there is a huge amount of focus being put on applications and data. So you're seeing more and more healthcare providers insurance companies, payers that are providing user applications for smart devices that are actually encouraging people, to interact and report back on themselves, whether it's, a diabetes check or blood pressure check or whatever it might be. That data channel is starting to take off very quickly as well.
Excellent. Thank you. The next question is, should PCC be part of every pharma's brand strategy? And I'm guessing the answer is yes. So, Steve, maybe you can go into some more details on what the biggest payoffs are for having a brand strategy that includes PCC.
Yeah, so that would be my answer is yes, it should be. And what the real benefits are is that you're taking something that might be resource intensive and you're automating events and communication practices that can augment what's already in place. So, everybody has an agent base that are used to take inbound calls as well as to make outbound calls to patients and to providers. Those same types of interactions can be done automatically in a proactive way, freeing up, the expensive resource that might be doing that today, all the while driving up customer satisfaction and interactions, adherence, and loyalty.
Okay, very good. We still want to get some more questions. We've got a few left in the queue, so you can still submit yours, and we'll try and get to them. So make sure you use the Ask a Question box and click that Submit button. The next question is, on average, how many calls can be deployed at a time for one outbound campaign?
That's another good question. So there's some variables that go along with that, everybody. When you think about, a large campaign, and I'm just going to use some rough numbers, but if you maybe you have 1 million calls that you want to place in a day, the thing that really determines how many can be placed at one time is, what is your calling window, right? This is one of the attributes of a campaign. Does it start at 8 a.m. and end at 8 p.m.? If it is, then you would have to divide up that 1 million calls through that 12-hour period and start to ring phones. And typically what you're going to find is that a large-scale provider will have the ability to do 400 to 500,000 calls an hour. And then, on top of that, I'm getting a little more in detail about a campaign. You have retry logic in there as well. So if you get a busy or a no answer signal or a voicemail, you may or may not leave a message and you'll want to retry that call again. Those all add up to, millions of attempts a day. And most providers are well set on their capacity to do that type of volume.
Excellent. Okay, we've got another question from the audience, and this person wanted me to ask about the importance of micro-targeting in the customer experience based upon the needs, wants, and concerns of the individual customer, and that includes building specific approaches based on what they know about how each person reacts and acts upon the message sent from the brand. Can you talk about this at all, Steve?
Yep, so that's a great thing. So this is all about data. And when you get down to the micro level and you're dealing with an individual, typically what you're finding out is that you're going to have to combine data sources to find out everything you know about that individual patient. So if I take myself as that example, I may respond to a phone call that's placed between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. On a Wednesday night, and I actually take that phone call all the way through, and I interact, and I tell the pharmaceutical company that I've taken my medication or that I haven't, and I get down to finishing the call. There's a lot of data, a lot of very useful data that has just been captured during that whole transaction. Those data can be used to build, a micro level campaign of everybody that looks like myself. So somebody that has the same attributes as me in my age bracket, perhaps where I live, could be my income level, it could be my weight, it could be the disease that I have, it could be the medication I'm taking, and all of those can be treated in the same way to make sure that you're treating like types of data and patients in the same way to get a better result in the end. And I hope that answers the question, but it really is about utilizing the data that you have from your CRM system, your customer management system, the patient management system, and the data that we get back from a campaign is all used, and analytics are done on that data to create demographics and groups that can be addressed in the same fashion and have a likely outcome of a positive, successful call.
Excellent. Well, we are a little past our allotted hour, and I want to respect our audience's time. So let's just do one more question before we close the event. So we've had a few questions in this area, so I'll kind of assimilate them. This one person said, I'd like to learn more about how to leverage patient advocacy groups or not-for-profits in a disease category via social media. What can you say about that, Steve?
That's another great question. So social media and patient advocate groups, there's a few things that you can do to bring these two types of groups together. Facebook, of course, is a great media that you can use to establish groups and pages so that you can get a lot of followers of that page and deliver information that may be pertinent to those people that would subscribe to that page. You can also use Twitter and get these patient advocacy groups to push messages out to their followers that is, it can't be personalized at that point, Dan. It has to be really more generic about certain trends or things that are happening in that disease category or whatever it may be, whether it's a drug trial or whatever patient advocacy group that might be dealing with. But they can certainly do more of a broad notification than a personalized notification from a social perspective, just due in nature to the sensitivity of patient data that can't be shared in that fashion.
Okay, very good. Well, that's all the time we have for Q&A. And once again, I encourage you all to contact our presenters. They're truly interested in hearing from you about this topic. If there's something you'd like to share with them or if there's additional questions that you think they could answer for you, certainly contact them via the information on the contact page. And if you still want to submit a question to our speakers or request a copy of today's slides, you can email abrennan@angel.com and put webinar in the subject line. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this event and have taken away some new insights. If any of your colleagues missed this presentation, it will be available as an on-demand archive in about a week, and you'll be notified via email. Well, now I'd like to give Steve the opportunity for a close comment. Steve?
I want to thank everybody for taking the time today to listen to Shankar and myself. I've enjoyed it. I hope you've gotten some useful information from an outbound perspective. We're actually, we're very willing to help in any sense. Feel free to reach out to ourselves. And I want to thank Pharma Voice for hosting the webinar and Dan for moderating. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you. And once again to all of our friends at Angel for sponsoring this event. Both of our presenters did an outstanding job. At Pharma Voice, we're always looking for better ways to bring you quality events that address your key issues. So that concludes the event. If you want to find any future web seminars, go to pharmavoice.com and search in our resources. We do have some webinars coming up in the future. Thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of your day. The event is now over.